Hello everybody, I'm James. Welcome back to my hobby channel. So today I'm talking about this Great Planes Revolver 61 to 91 class sports plane. It's an ARF, and the reason I'm talking about it today is because I have to do some repairs. Mainly I have to fix the landing gear. So here's a picture of the plane, and this plane was actually pretty popular going back a ways now, and I don't think there's too many of these available to buy directly from the store, but you can get them on eBay. What you'll do though, if when you're reading the reviews about it, what you'll notice is a lot of people mention that the landing gear was a poor design, that the landing gear is not strong enough to support the plane. So I'm going to go ahead and add to that long list of people doing those reviews and agree with them that that is the case. So what happened to me is I made in this plane about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I've been taking it out flying it, trying to get used to it. And last weekend I was flying and I came down a little fast, going faster than I should have, but I didn't hit the runway that I thought too hard. I didn't bounce it, the plane didn't come down and hit hard. It just came down actually relatively smoothly. It came in, I had the flaps down, so I was slowing down, but I did hit, and then when I did, the landing gear just snapped right off. And the plane, basically the landing gear got caught between the plane, the bottom of the plane, and it was sort of on its belly sliding along the runway, and it damaged the underside of the airplane and put a couple holes in it down on the fuselage. So I'm going to go ahead and try to repair this and reinforce it, and that's what this video is going to be about. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the actual construction, the original construction. So this is what the landing gear mounts to. It's this little piece of plywood, and it's got, of course, these T-nuts behind here, and that's pretty common. There's nothing wrong with that. And what they do is they take this and they put it right here. Now the problem is a couple things. One of them is, I can tell, at least it looks to me, that they just used a CA glue to bond this to the airplane. You know, you definitely don't want to use the CA glue on this. This should have been a pretty strong epoxy bond. It looks to me like they just used the CA glue. And this piece just went on in here like this. I can't get it to go back in, but it just sat right in there like that. And that's the only thing that was holding the landing gear on, was this. This is it right here. There's no reinforced, there's just nothing. So then the landing gear is in two pieces. And it sweeps back. So it's not, the landing gear is not, the wheel, like for example, the axle and the base of the landing gear are not perpendicular to each other. It's offset, it sweeps backwards. And that sweep, that kind of backward sweep, you can kind of see it in the picture here, that backward sweep causes a problem. Now, I'm not a mechanical engineer or a physicist or anything like that, but the way I look at it is that because it's sweeping backwards, when the landing gear touches the runway, the weight is then applied to the landing gear. The landing gear could have a tendency to sort of bend backwards because it's not, in other words, the weight of the airplane isn't going perpendicular into the fuselage. The weight is being applied in such a way, because of the sweep of the landing gear, it's applied in such a way that it acts sort of like a lever action, if you will, and the landing gear will then kind of want to bend backwards. And that's what I saw happen. It just snapped and went backwards. So there's two pieces like this. And that's another thing. They should have made just a solid single piece landing gear. Having two pieces just makes it weaker, and you know, it's just not a good design. So in other words, so this was bolted on here like this. The plane hits, and because of the, well, one of the reasons, because of the backward swept shape of the landing gear, and because of the mounting plate is pretty weak, it just snaps back and flies backwards. And that's really disappointing, because you spend a lot of money on these things, and you put a lot of effort into these, and then something simple like that really ruins your day, right? So the landing gear flew off. It damaged back here, the piece of the this bulkhead that's sitting back in here, snapped part of that, and also put a hole on the side up here that I showed you just a few minutes ago. All right, so how am I going to repair this? So I've been looking online, reading some things, and what I read matches what I experienced with this airplane. And that is, like I said, is the idea of the fact that this plate is way too small, and that it rips backwards. So it has sort of like this turning motion as it pulls off the plane. So one thing to consider is trying to get this to, when rebuilding this, we want to make sure that we have this attached to the firewall, so that hopefully it can prevent that thing from pulling off. So we want to make it a reinforcement that attaches this to the firewall. And then because it's so narrow, what I thought it would be good to do is actually extend this piece of wood. I'm not going to use this one obviously, but I'm going to go ahead and extend a piece of wood back and just basically make a replacement plywood plate that I'm going to stick in here. And then I'll be able to epoxy it here, I'll be able to epoxy it here, and then I'm going to epoxy around this edge in here. And hopefully that'll give me a pretty good, strength in that, on that account. And then I'm also going to use some aluminum sheeting, and I'm going to fold over the front of it, and I'm going to bolt it to the front up here. And I know it's going to add weight to the plane, but I don't know how else really to do this. Every fix I see involves some level of adding metal bracing and bolting and this type of thing, so there's no way to really get away from actually having to add a little bit of weight to the plane. It's poor design, and there's no other way around it. I don't know how you could do it without kind of having to beef it up like that. Okay, so I already started doing this, and I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to cut a plate to fit in this shape right here. And how I got that shape, to be able to measure that shape out, instead of trying to measure it and do all this kind of stuff to try to guess, I used this method here where I put a piece of paper down, and then what happens is I can go around here and I can do this and use a pencil, and you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'll go around here, around this side. Let's see if I can hold it down a little better here. Have to search around for your parts. I'm not doing a good job down here. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. You find your edge. As long as you hold it steady and keep holding it straight, there you go. You get a nice pattern. Okay, so you can see on here, hopefully you can see on here, that I was able to trace the outline of what I need to cut. And you have to kind of look at it, but there's a couple places where it's not perfect, so I'll go ahead and this actually goes through here like this. Yeah, and then over here, this line's not correct, this line is correct right here. So what I did is I went through and I made a pattern out of this. What happened to my pattern? And I cut it out. Let me see if I can find it real quick. All right, it was elusive, but I found it. So here's what I ended up with. I ended up with this kind of template that I used that method, and it fits right on top of here. And so that gives me sort of a starting point. It's not perfect, but it's a really good way to sort of get an odd shape and to start working with it. So I took this pattern, and let me grab my plywood. All right, so I actually had this piece of plywood from a different project, but this is 1/4-inch plywood, and I got this at Home Depot. I think it was like $5. Now, if you go to a hobby store and you want to buy a piece of plywood, that's a little piece like this, that's a 1/4-inch piece of plywood, it's probably going to cost you $10 or $20 or something, it's but there's nothing special about it. This is just good quality plywood, and it's 1/4-inch, so it matches the original landing gear plate. So I traced my, oops, that just landed on my foot, so that wasn't good. So I traced my pattern onto the wood, and then I made it a little bit bigger, and then I just cut it out. So that's the piece I cut out right there. I used the jigsaw. If you don't have a jigsaw, it's going to be kind of hard working with plywood. You can get a hand saw, maybe like a little coping saw or something. That would work also. One of the key things you want to do is you have an inside angle like this. You don't need to do it here, but on these inside angles, it's helpful to drill a hole right there. so that when you get to it, you can get to it from both sides and it'll sort of snap out of there. But anyhow, so here's the piece of wood. This is my top, I'm saying. And right now it doesn't fit. And that's just because I haven't shaped it down yet. But this is what I'm going to put here. Now I weighed this, and I think it weighs 2 ounces. I'm going to take a little bit of the weight off. And then I'm thinking that I'm also going to put some lightning holes in here. Probably not here, but I may put a couple, maybe two or three back in here, just to lighten it up a little bit. But the idea is that once this is attached and in here nice, you know, it doesn't look like Frankenstein like it does right now. It's going to be, hopefully it'll look nice. I'll have this in here, and then I got some, I think this was $7 or $8, again, Home Depot. This is just aluminum, some aluminum sheeting. I was kind of surprised they had this. But so I'm not going to be depending on the aluminum in this matter. It's not very strong. I can flex it, right? But obviously I can't pull it apart. It has a pretty high strength in that direction. So the idea is I'm going to cut a piece of this off, and then I'm going to fold it to like a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to bolt it to the firewall, and then I'm going to bring it over the top, and I'm not going to go all the way back. I'm only going to go basically to the back of the landing gear. So this is going to look funny, but it's going to be on here like this, and then the landing gear, well, it's going to go down and it's going to fold over. Imagine it folding over, and it's going to go down, and then I'm going to put the landing gear back here. So that's going to hold it down, and then I'm going to use these I'm going to use the T-nuts and some bolts, and I'm going to attach the aluminum to the firewall. And so that's the theory. That's what I'm planning on doing, and I think that will work pretty well. Again, I'm adding weight, but it's not that much. This aluminum sheet, once I cut it, it's not going to weigh hardly anything. But it is going to add a lot of strength. Like I said, it's not going to have strength this way, but that's not what we're using it for. We're using it to basically to a pulling strength, so you can't pull up on it. And then I think I may, at that point, when I get everything kind of finished and sanded and fit properly, I may just put a layer of fiberglass over this, using an epoxy and then the fiberglass sheeting to add a little bit more strength and actually kind of finish it off. So looking at the T-nuts really quick, I got 2 sizes here. I have an 832 by 1/4 and I have a 632 by 1/4. I haven't decided which one I want to use. Again, I want to keep the weight down, but I don't want to do all this work and just have it fall off again. Now, and then I have some bolts. I have an 832 5/8. Those are probably a little bit too long. And then I have the 632 3/4. These are a little bit too long also. I'll probably have to cut them, but this is all they have at the store. So my plan is that I'm going to have, there's already 2 holes in the firewall, so I can utilize those 2 holes. And then I think I'm going to go up to maybe on both sides, kind of offset them, and I'm going to put it maybe one here and one here. So the idea is that the aluminum sheet is going to basically, like I said, aluminum sheet's going to fold over and then kind of go on top of the plywood, and then that's going to help hold the plane. So the idea is that when this whole thing's on here, and the force, that kind of pulling force that's wants to rip the landing gear off, hopefully between having it attached up here and then kind of going over the top of it, that'll help hold it down, plus having it epoxied in, and then like I said, probably doing not maybe necessarily a resin, but using a fiberglass and just kind of giving it just a layer of reinforced the epoxy with the fiberglass cloth. Hopefully between those 3 things and my better way of landing, learning how to land this plane a little bit better, hopefully that'll hold up. So that's the idea, at least. And if I do all this, I kind of feel that the only way this is going to break off of here is if I have sort of like a catastrophic crash. And if that's the case, the landing gear is probably going to be the last thing that I'm worried about. So anyhow, let's see what we can do.